The ship creaked like an old man with arthritis and ambitions of dance. Thalia Wren kicked the maintenance panel shut with her boot and muttered something anatomically impossible about the ship's designer. The Crawling Hope had earned its name years ago, mostly because the hissing scrap heap with a death wish didn't look great on port schedules. She pulled herself upright and scraped her knuckles on a coil of live wiring. Sparks bit her fingers, she bit back. The wiring blinked out. Victory. Somewhere in the overhead vents, the ship's AI kettle cleared its throat. Chief Wren, your sabotage attempt has been logged. Don't flatter yourself, Kettle, she said, wiping her hands on her cargo pants. If I wanted to kill you, I'd have done it with a spoon and a bad attitude. Noted. Shall I prepare your usual celebratory snack? Synth peanut clusters and caffeinated sludge. She rolled her eyes, but her stomach grumbled approval. Make it double. I just survived a conversation with the captain. Again. He tried to explain budget cuts using interpretive dance. It was haunting. Before Kettle could offer a rebuttal or a sympathy playlist, the comm crackled. All crew report to Docking Bay 2, incoming dignitary, where something that doesn't scare children. Thalia looked down at her outfit. Oil-stained pants, sleeveless thermal, boots held together with optimism and duct tape, and decided she was already overdressed. When she got to the bay, half the crew was loitering with varying levels of interest. The pilot twins were betting on whether the visitor would be armed. The ship's doctor was already pre-dosing himself with anti-anxiety meds. Captain Joran stood in front of them all, sweating like the fabric of reality owed him money. The docking ramp hissed. Light spilled through, cold and sterile, like the gaze of someone who organized their thoughts in alphabetical order. The woman who stepped through was a contradiction in motion, tall, lithe, draped in something that shimmered between fabric and force field. Her skin was moonlight on metal. Her ears, long, tapered, twitching with every sound, stood out like sculpted blades. Ah, Thalia muttered. Another stuck-up star elf. Virely's eyes, iridescent and unamused, scanned the crew like she was grading them on posture. When they landed on Thalia, something sparked. Recognition, distaste, or just the expression of someone seeing a boot print where diplomacy should be. Commander Virely of the NREL Union, she said, voice crisp enough to slice bread. I will be requiring cooperation, silence, and a non-fatal work environment. 2 out of 3's not bad, Thalia whispered to the pilot next to her. Virely continued, unaware or uncaring. This vessel will carry me to Chiron Theta. I expect efficiency. Thalia raised a hand. Does efficiency include the hallway where the gravity inverts every third Tuesday? It includes not speaking unless spoken to, Virely replied without looking. Thalia dropped her hand and made a mental note to label the commander's door with something artistic, possibly involving a toilet schematic. Later in the corridor outside the main engineering bay, Thalia found herself face to ears with the new addition. Virely stood there, tapping a panel, clearly frustrated. The panel blinked in stubborn reds and oranges, mocking her like a child refusing broccoli. You have to ask it nicely, Thalia said, sidling up. I wasn't aware sarcasm was a recognized programming language. Thalia smiled. It's the only language that gets you through this ship. Virely turned to her, eyes narrowing. You are the engineer. I'm the miracle worker. Titles are for people with consistent paychecks. Without warning, the panel hissed, and a security shield flared between them, trapping Virely's arm. She didn't flinch. Thalia raised an eyebrow. Well, either that's a cry for help or you're into some weird stuff. I attempted a manual override, Virely said, voice calm, body frozen. The system retaliated. Thalia leaned in and tapped 3 buttons in a rhythm that resembled a knock-knock joke. The shield dissolved. You're welcome. I would have resolved it. Sure, Thalia said, walking off. Just a few more hours of mutual glaring and maybe some intense humming. Virely stared after her, unreadable. The moment came later, in one of the ship's narrower corridors. narrow enough that a wrong step meant two people suddenly knew each other far too well. Thalia was walking fast, hot from a minor reactor leak and an argument with the ship's vending unit. Virely appeared from the opposite end, equally swift, probably en route to criticize air molecules. They met at the curve. Neither yielded. "Move," Thalia said. "I outrank you. I outweigh you, but I can fix more damage." "I doubt that." Thalia smirked. "Wanna test it?" She stepped sideways, so did Virely. They mirrored again and again. "This is immature," Virely snapped. "Correct, also entertaining." In a single, fluid motion, Virely reached out and grabbed Thalia's arm to guide her aside. It was a mistake. Thalia reacted without thinking. Her body spun, weight dropping low, arm twisting free with a practiced jerk. Her foot swept Virely's leg, and a heartbeat later, the alien commander found herself flat on the floor, with a human knee hovering dangerously close to her solar plexus. The hallway went silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the soft beep of an unfiled HR violation. Thalia blinked. "Huh." Virely stared up at her, wide-eyed but composed. "Is this part of the miracle-working process?" Thalia stood and offered a hand. "Only when people grab me like I'm a broken hose." Virely hesitated, then accepted the hand. Her touch was warm, not soft but controlled, precise. "Your reflexes are exceptional." "Thanks." "Yours are theoretical." Virely dusted herself off with regal irritation. "In the NREL academies, we avoid violence unless provoked." "Well, congratulations," Thalia said, grinning. "You got promoted to provoker." Virely gave her a look that could sterilize cattle. They didn't speak for the rest of the walk, but the air between them crackled with unspoken insults and a kind of reluctant fascination. Something had shifted. Thalia couldn't say what, and Virely probably had a name for it that sounded like a wine you couldn't afford. Back in engineering, Thalia kicked a panel until it started behaving and sat down with her snack. The sludge was hot and the peanut clusters were only mildly radioactive. Perfect. Kettle beeped overhead. "Commander Virely has filed a report regarding your encounter." Did she spell awesome right this time? She listed it under training opportunity. Thalia laughed, almost choked on her sludge. "She's gonna be fun." Somewhere deep in the ship, a dormant system flickered online just for a second. A pulse echoed down unseen corridors. Sensors registered it. No one noticed. Yet, Thalia kicked the side of the navigation console like it owed her money. The screen flickered, shifted through 6 colors not found in nature, and finally settled on the standard star chart, if standard meant wildly inaccurate and faintly vibrating. "You've kicked that thing more than the crew's coffee addiction," Kettle noted from the overhead speakers. "That's because it responds to physical affection," Thalia said, "unlike most of the people on this ship." "Would you like me to draw up a companionship protocol? Only if it involves snacks and no judgment." The nav console sputtered again, this time in what Thalia swore was passive-aggressive Morse code. She gave it a warning glance and turned her attention to the signal blinking in the far left quadrant of the chart. It pulsed, soft, rhythmic, consistent. It had no registered source, no known frequency, and absolutely no business being anywhere near a junk run through the Veldran Verge. It had started about 4 hours after the Virely floor slam incident, as the crew had taken to calling it, mostly because the ship's medic had posted the replay on every public screen with musical accompaniment. "What is that?" Thalia muttered, tapping the signal. Kettle answered with a dramatic pause. "Unknown. Language not in any recognized database. Origin shifting. Possibly a glitch. Possibly an existential invitation to the void." So, same odds as our last dinner menu. At the same moment, halfway across the ship in the commander's private quarters, which somehow managed to look sterile even with decorative moss, Virely sat at her console, studying the same pulse. Unlike Thalia, she was neither muttering nor threatening the hardware. She was, however, frowning so hard that her ears had drawn slightly back, a trait among the NREL that usually meant deep concentration or the urgent need to sneeze. The signal wasn't just unfamiliar. It was familiar in a way that didn't make sense. Her people had records of such patterns, ancient, fragmentary, and tied to a species long erased from galactic archives. She overlaid the pulse with the old NREL archival fragments and the waveform matched perfectly. She requested a double check. The computer confirmed. She requested a silence protocol. The lights dimmed. Of course, she whispered to herself. It would be her. A soft chime rang at her door. Enter, she said, smoothing her expression. Thalia walked in, holding a half-melted ration bar and a data chip. She looked like she'd lost a wrestling match with a grease trap. I brought you a gift, Thalia said. It's edible, technically, and this chip has the signal you're pretending not to panic about. I'm not panicking. You blink when you're lying. I always blink. Exactly, not like that. Thalia sat in the visitor chair, kicked her boots up on the nearest table, and began eating the ration bar in a way that implied a personal grudge against the flavor. I analyzed the signal, she said between bites. It's old. Like fossil old, and something in my skull seems to think it's soothing. Virely turned slowly. What do you mean your skull thinks it's soothing? You ever get a song stuck in your head that makes your molars vibrate? No. Then you've never been to a Deathworld nightclub. Anyway, it's like that. Except this one's got a beat that makes me feel like I should be building a weapon or climbing a tree to scream. Virely hesitated. Do you understand it? Not exactly, but it understands me. You ever been listened to by a noise? Yes, it was called interspecies diplomacy. They locked eyes, both silent. I think I need to scan you, Virely finally said. Unless that's code for drinks and light conversation, I'm not into it. It's not. You reacted when I touched your arm, the same spot the signal seems to be pulsing through. Thalia narrowed her eyes. You think I'm some kind of radio antenna. I think you're more than what you claim to be. That's what the prison psychologist said, right before the chair snapped. Despite herself, Virely smirked. An hour later they were in the medbay, surrounded by more equipment than was legal on most planets. Thalia sat on the scanning table, arms crossed. If this thing starts beeping in Morse again, I swear I'm suing, she muttered. Virely adjusted the frequency calibrator. Hold still. Your sarcasm is interfering with the readings. The scan flared. A blueprint of Thalia's nervous system lit the hollow display. Hidden within it, threads of something foreign, bioluminescent circuits, embedded deep in muscle and bone. That's not human tech, Virely said. It's not mine, Thalia said, alarmed. I don't do interior decorating. It's ancient, older than any current genetic mod, older than your species' contact with space travel. I'm not old, I'm vintage. I'm being serious. So am I. Vintage comes with surprises. The display zoomed in on the left forearm, the same place Virely had grabbed. The circuits there were more active, pulsing faintly in sync with the incoming signal. What happens if it keeps pulsing? Thalia asked. Unknown. Do I explode? Unlock a secret spaceship? Grow an extra arm? Hopefully not in that order. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the medbay the only sound. So, Thalia said, what's the plan? We observe. We avoid any further triggering stimuli. Thalia raised an eyebrow. That includes grabbing you without consent, Virely added. Progress, Thalia said, smirking. As she slid off the table, the lights flickered. The pulse grew louder. Not in sound, but in presence. Virely turned. That wasn't me. Nope, Thalia said. That one came from inside my bones. The ship shuddered. In the core, unseen to the crew, one of the dormant systems came alive. It identified the pulse. Identified the carrier. Subject compatible. Activation in progress. Kettle's voice stammered on the comms. We may have a situation. What Thalia did. The moment she reached the console, her arm lit up, not just on the skin beneath it. Circuits flared to life, matching the rhythm of the pulses. The console responded by displaying a hologram of what looked like a galaxy, but unfamiliar. Twisted, bent, wrong. What is that? Thalia asked. A record, Virely said slowly, of something that was erased. Images flooded the air. Battles fought in skies with purple lightning. Massive beings, neither human nor Enrel, clashing in orbit over fractured moons. One figure stood out. Humanoid, fierce, wielding weapons made of sound and pressure, with glowing circuits like Thalia's running through their limbs. The image froze, then zoomed in. Thalia's face stared back. "That's not me," she whispered. "That asterisk can't asterisk be me." "It's a genetic match," Virely said, eyes wide. "Or a precursor, someone you were modeled from." "I was asterisk made, Virely. I was born in a storm bunker on Series 9 with 2 broken incubators and a mom who could kill a man with a spoon. Your DNA says otherwise." The console glitched. The room trembled. A voice spoke not through sound but directly into their minds. "Protector, awakened, cycle resumes, prepare." Thalia recoiled. "Nope, nope to all of that. I didn't sign up for cycles. I barely signed up for breakfast." The structure began to collapse in on itself, folding and reshaping like paper caught in a breeze. Virely grabbed Thalia's arm. "We have to go. No argument here." They sprinted back to the shuttle. The moment they launched, the structure folded out of existence behind them, vanished without sound or trace, not even residual radiation. On board the crawling Hope, the crew stared at them as they exited the shuttle. "What happened?" the captain asked, wide-eyed. Thalia glanced at Virely, then back at the crew. Short version. "I might be an ancient warrior princess with memory loss and questionable fashion taste. Long version. Get me a drink and a diagram, and I'll draw you something that ruins your next 3 dreams." Later in the engine room, Virely sat beside Thalia as they both stared at the circuits still glowing under Thalia's skin. "You okay?" Virely asked. Thalia shook her head. "I have no idea who I am, or what I'm supposed to do. But I do know one thing." "What?" "If this whole protector thing comes with a cape, I'm picking the color." The room was full of humming, not mechanical, not electronic, just Virely, humming, off-key. "Why are you doing that?" Thalia asked, lying on the diagnostics table with one boot still on and the other lost somewhere in engineering. "It calms me," Virely said without looking up from the neural monitor. "It's a focus exercise." "You sound like an injured toaster." "That's the point. It forces the mind to override discomfort with confusion." "Well, congrats, I'm deeply confused." The console pinged. A screen showed Thalia's neural signature overlaid with unfamiliar glyphs. The biocircuitry in her arm had stabilized, but only because Virely had rigged an experimental dampening band around it, made from half a neural mesh, 3 pieces of a broken music player, and something she refused to admit was once part of a toilet sensor. "You're stable," Virely said. "I was stable before. You electrocuted yourself opening a pickle jar last night." "That's just Deathworld seasoning." Virely sighed. "The signal is still dormant, but the algorithm's waking. It's like your DNA is trying to boot up a program it forgot it had installed." "Any chance it's solitaire?" "More like tactical extermination protocols with mood enhancer settings." Thalia rubbed her face. "So I'm a half-human bioweapon with a sleep mode. Great. This is why I never signed up for those ancestry kits. I knew they were a trap." A sudden alarm cut through the room. Kettle's voice followed. "Unscheduled approach, ship ID. Spiral Veil." Thalia sat up. "That's not a delivery service, is it?" "No," Virely said, already moving. "It's worse. They're scavengers, cultists, biotech freaks, the kind of people who think skulls make great hat ornaments." "They don't. Only if the skull's still using itself." On the bridge, the view was unsettlingly familiar. A sleek black ship, bristling with modifications that looked illegal even from this distance. The Spiral Veil didn't so much fly as ooze through space with intent. Kettle announced, "They've issued a boarding request." Thalia leaned forward. Boarding as in tea and polite diplomacy. They used the word asterisk ingress, followed by asterisk bioharvest, so no. The captain looked like he was about to pass out. Suggestions. Virely didn't hesitate. We go full lockdown. Prepare for zero-G combat. Evacuate non-essential personnel. Thalia cracked her knuckles. Or, and hear me out, we make them deeply regret every life choice they've ever made. Moments later, the crawling hope was a fortress. Bulkhead sealed. Lighting dimmed. Weapons charged. Most of the crew had taken defensive positions, except the pilot twins who were arguing about whether hiding in the ventilation shaft counted as strategy or cowardice. Thalia and Virely stood outside the main access corridor, waiting. Thalia had 2 stun batons, a scowl, and a small pack of spicy snack crisps she refused to let go of. I'm just saying, she said, munching loudly. If these guys are here for me, maybe we could try something new, like talking. You want to negotiate with cultists? Depends. Are they the dramatic chanting kind, or the breathy whispering kind? They called you a asterisk holy conduit of ancestral wrath. Okay, that's the whispering kind. Definitely going to be some robes involved. The boarding hatch hissed open with a hydraulic sigh that sounded entirely too pleased with itself. The spiral veil envoy stepped forward. Clad in armor grown from bioengineered coral, covered in etched runes, and wearing a helmet that looked suspiciously like a repurposed braincase. They raised a hand. We come in the name of the reclamation. Cool, Thalia said. We come in the name of asterisk don't touch me. The envoy tilted their head. You bear the mark of the cycle. I bear a lot of things, sarcasm, a deep dislike of mourning people, intestinal trauma from bad chili. Virely stepped between them. State your purpose. You house the awakening, the envoy said, voice buzzing through a translator that sounded like it ran on bees. It must be completed. Thalia raised a baton. Here's the problem. My awakening doesn't come with a manual, so if you're planning some kind of ancient ritual, I'm going to need a PowerPoint. Ritual is unnecessary. You are the trigger, we are the hand. Well, this hand's got pepper spray and unresolved trauma. Negotiations ended when the envoy lunged. Thalia dodged, baton spinning in her grip. Virely countered with a knee to the envoy's midsection, sending them into the wall. The fight broke instantly. Dozens of spiral veil combatants swarmed in. Too many limbs, too many eyes, not enough personal boundaries. Thalia moved like someone born in chaos. A twist, a strike, a dodge, her body acting before her brain could catch up. Circuits lit beneath her skin, reacting not to her fear but to her fury. Virely kept pace, elegant and lethal. She fought like a symphony with knives. Together, they carved through the corridor, leaving stunned and twitching bodies in their wake. Thalia grabbed the envoy by the collar. Tell your creepy cult buddies to back off, or I start swinging with intent. The envoy stared at her, then smiled, a horrible, sharp-toothed thing. It's already begun. You can't stop the reconnect. Reconnect with what? Your past, your purpose. They activated something on their wrist and vanished in a burst of light and bad smell. The rest of the spiral veil scattered, retreating. Kettle's voice returned. They're gone, for now. In the silence, Thalia looked down at her arm. The circuits were pulsing again, not violently, rhythmically, steady. I'm starting to feel like the galaxy's worst USB stick. Virely didn't respond right away. Then softly, we need answers. Thalia exhaled, and probably more snacks. They sat in the empty corridor, surrounded by flickering lights and the faint smell of ozone. We make a good team, Thalia said. Don't let it go to your head. Too late, it's already renting space in there. And beneath the deck plates, far in the hidden systems of the ship, the algorithm continued to stir. The ship drifted in silence above a starless chasm, hovering on the edge of existence like a tourist with bad ideas and no return ticket. Thalia sat on the edge of the cargo bay, dangling her feet over a crate marked, "Do not open seriously," nursing a cup of something warm, highly caffeinated, and legally ambiguous. So, let me get this straight, she said, pointing a finger at the empty air. I'm part weapon, part key, part ancient galactic error, and possibly related to some warrior species that made extinction look like a fashion trend. Kettle answered from overhead. That is the working theory, yes. Also, you've been humming that weird pulse song for 3 days. It's starting to affect my cooling systems. It's catchy, she muttered. The door slid open behind her. Virely stepped in, holding a datapad and looking like she hadn't slept since sarcasm was invented. They've decoded more of the algorithm, she said. There's a final signal, a location. Thalia took a long sip from her mug. Is it another void, or do I actually get to see a planet this time? A planet, sort of. Defined, sort of. It's the ruins of a facility, one of the original sites. The algorithm wants you there. Great. Love a good haunted science bunker. Kettle piped in chipper. We've entered coordinates, ETA, 4 hours, assuming the engines don't try to reinvent geometry again. Thalia looked at Virely. You coming? Obviously. Cool. I'll bring snacks. The planet was gray, cracked,